Am I sharing?
Yes, you are.
You are sharing.
Terrific.
Okay. Well, I think we're close enough to 11 that we'll just go ahead and kick this off. We're ready for session 2. And session 2 is Becoming Modulist, how a team built a platform to partner with communities and newspapers. So here to talk to us today is the Modulist president, Devlin Brooks. Modulist is a company he founded for the family-owned Forum Communications, and it is headquartered in Fargo, North Dakota. Devlin has been in the newspaper business for 25 years. He also serves as an intern pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, working on his Master of Divinity degree. He serves as the chair of the Fargo Moorhead Big Brothers, Big Sisters Advisory Committee as well. So thank you, Devlin, for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Andrea. I was looking at the attendee list. It kind of feels like Old Home Week. So welcome to everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm flattered and honored. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Modulist, and because I think it's a really cool story, about a homegrown opportunity to solve a need in the media landscape. And so, as Andrea said, my background is in the newsroom, right? I came up from very small newspapers in around the state of Minnesota, ended up here at the Forum back in 2007, and then found an unlikely route into the role I'm sitting in today. I went at one point about 12 years ago over to work with our development team, our in-house development team here at Forum Communications, who at the time was rebuilding a content management system. And I went over there to serve kind of as a guinea pig journalist. And they would build items in the CMS. They would have me try them out, and then I would go to our newsrooms and then get the newsrooms feeds back, bring it back to the developers. And so I stayed in that role for about 18 months, and it was kind of unexpected. And then that role ended. The CMS was built, and our CEO at the time came to me and said, "Hey, there's some other issues involving technology and just process that would you mind taking a look at some of these?" And in about 2012, one of the issues that came up for us was obits. We were early into the process as a company, starting to charge for obits. Those of you that have been newspaper readers for a long time might know that that's something the industry started doing 10, 12, 15 years ago. And we were fresh into that foray. And we rolled it out as something where each of our 40 newspapers at the time kind of had free reign as to how they were going to do it. And soon into that process, we found out that that really wasn't a great mousetrap. And so our CEO asked me to take a look at it and say, "Hey, can we find a better process?" And so, not knowing a whole lot about the funeral home industry at the time, I went on a road trip, and I actually took 2 months and visited every funeral home that we had, that we served in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And so, if you ever want an adventure, take that road trip. So, and this isn't going to surprise anybody on this conference. What I came back with after all of those interviews was they wanted three things. They wanted dedicated service, they wanted an automated platform to make things easier, and they wanted simplified pricing. And nearly every interview I did came down to those three consumer requests. And so we set down this road to build that better mousetrap. I came back, and our CEO at the time, Bill Marcel Jr., gave me the authority to just kind of delve into this thing and come up with a better process. And so I talked to our IT team at the time, and we were using an advertising system to allow for consumers to come onto our websites and build classifieds. And it certainly wasn't, it wasn't the vendor portal that we see today through much of our media landscape. It was pretty primitive, but it allowed them to automate the process. And so I asked our IT team, I said, "Can we hijack this thing so that I can make it and conform it so that it can take obits through an automated process as well. And lo and behold, our talented developers did that for me. And so we kind of cracked open this online classified ordering system, um, finagled it so that we could take obits online. And that's where we started from. And we figured out the process here in Fargo, worked with the 5 major funeral homes here in our metro area. And then we started to apply the process to each of the other sites in our company. Over time, about 3 years, we ended up getting to the point where one small team here in Fargo office was managing the obit process for all 40 of our newspapers across all 4 states. And so basically said, well, what's next, right? Let's take a look at any consumer-driven process where there's content that consumers want to get into our publications, that our audiences want to read, and that really is just good local community content for our newspapers, right? So kind of that triangular win. And we realized that basically anything coming from a consumer, from a wedding engagement announcement to a wedding photo to a retirement ad to a happy birthday ad or a birth announcement, right? Or a new hire announcement from a business or a business that just received an award in their industry. All of those things were essentially the same as an obit. It was content that consumers wanted to have in their local community newspapers, and they were willing to build the ad and customize it themselves. And so we started to apply that same process that we developed for obits to these other content categories, and we got pretty good at it. We looked around the market. The technology that we were using was sunsetting, and I went to the board here at Forum Communications and said, we can build this better. And to their credit, they said, go do it. And so we did. So that is kind of the history of Modulist. And 4 years ago, we started down the road of development, and we wanted to build a vendor product in the software space that newspapers could use to reduce their production costs and increase their revenues while giving a better platform to their consumers to allow consumers to publish their own life stories. So what is Modulist? Modulist is a media services company that specializes in all kinds of different paid content categories. We mentioned it earlier, obits, wedding engagements, retirements, happy ads. One of our favorite that we don't get see used nearly as often as we would like is pet announcements. We actually created a specific content category so consumers can come in, and when Wolfie graduates from puppy kennel school, they can put that ad in their local community newspaper and share that with everybody. Or when people bring their fur baby home from a rescue, they can share that with the community. And so let me tell you, when those ads come through the staff, they get passed around because everybody loves to see those. So, but we wanted to focus on building long-term partnerships with community, local-owned news organizations, because the changing landscape in media, right, is that to a certain degree, our local media, the rug that the business model that they had depended on for so many decades has really kind of been pulled out from beneath them. Their bread and butter are small businesses, newspaper, restaurants, and event centers, and all of those things that have events going on that they're wanting the public to know, and they advertise about it. And we know what's happening to that and what the pandemic has done to expedite that process. And so we want to place Modulist as a vendor that really is a long-term business partner with local community newspapers, because we believe in what they do. We believe in their value to their communities. I'm lucky to serve alongside a team of professionals that have all served in media and see what we do as kind of a calling. And so it's really neat when we work with our external media partners and they see the passion that our team has for serving their local communities. So that's what Modulist is. we've went through a lot of this, but what we identified as a business opportunity in the changing media landscape was how to process paid content for local newspapers, local community newspapers that don't have a lot of staff, but want to get this content into their publications. Oftentimes, these are small orders. Sometimes they're, as low as $50. Sometimes they might be a little bit more expensive. But to get that $50 ad, there's a lot of production costs when you're handling that by phone or through email or a walk-in at the front counter. And so the return isn't that great. What we want to allow newspapers and community media to do is take the time that they're spending on this community content and spend it elsewhere, because we have a white glove concierge service that can give their consumers the same, top-notch, world-class service that they've always expected. So we're working on their behalf and still building their brand name. Just to extrapolate a little bit further, we wanted to create value for our partners through technology. For many of you that are on this call, right, you either know people in the newspaper, local media business, or have been in it yourselves. And, for a long time, we wore working harder as kind of a badge of honor. And we want to shift that mentality to working smarter because it extends our resources. And so we want to position ourselves so that our partners can redeploy their resources into other value creation initiatives, whether that's spending more time on really good staff written content, or maybe that's spending more time on finding those bigger advertising dollars to support your media, whether it's printed advertising, whether it's digital advertising. But the less time small newspaper staffs are spending on those one-off obits or that $50 happy birthday ad, the more time they can be spending on high value content that their audiences are craving. Finally, we just want to build a long-term relationship, right? We're focusing and positioning ourselves in the market so that 3 years later, we go back to these same media companies and say, what can we do for you now? What other services that can we provide to make your extend your bottom line? Just quickly, it gives you a little bit of a timeline. This was a dream in the making for a long time. And, there was no get rich quick overnight scheme that happened with us. We started with a very small idea and with a lot of allowance for making errors back in 2012. We experimented with a lot of different business models. We experimented with how to provide the correct customer service and, frankly, how to position ourselves as experts in this paid content market, this paid content space and industry, when there really wasn't any other vendor out there to model ourselves on. And so that we started in 2012. Our biggest milestones started happening in 2017 when, our FCC corporate board signed off on the building of Modulist. We work with a company that's based out of Minneapolis called MentorMate to do our development. And so we got into this world of software development, which was really a new world for me. Here, not that long ago, I had been an assigning editor here in the Forum newsroom and couldn't have told you what computer development entailed. But thankfully, we partnered with the right partner. It was a great fit for us. We are still partnering with MentorMate 4 years later. They still continue to build and enhance our product for us. And so we got really lucky in that space. 2018, we finally onboarded all of the internal FCC properties into Modulist so that they were, for the first time across our entire company, all of the paid content that was coming into all of our publications was coming into our portal through Modulist. No longer were people taking emails, or, believe it or not, even back in 2018, we were still getting faxes for stuff in places in certain of our newspaper markets. And so we have about 99% compliance now with consumers. Even with older newspaper readers, generally they find a family member that can help them, or somebody hooks them up with our with our toll-free number, and one of our Modulist folks will walk them through the order with them. But 99% of our orders now come through our automated system all across FCC. In addition to, in 2019, once we had our process buttoned up, we started to expand and offer our services to other external media properties. And now we have external media clients in, I think, 7 states. And as we continue to grow, and it's been a rewarding experience hearing from other external media companies saying, yes, your service helps us reduce our costs and increase revenue. So as someone that loves local newspapers, that helps drive our passion for this product that we've built. 2029, one of our, I think, one of our key milestones that we're very, very proud of is in January of this year. Even as one of the smaller specialized media vendors in that space, we were able to convince editor and publisher. For those of you that are familiar with editor and publisher, it's probably the landmark publication in the news media space. It's been around for 100+ years, and we met with them and courted them and developed a relationship so that we are actually processing their help wanted ads now for their magazine. And so we got there through a lot of hard work and relationship building, and we're just really excited about where the future is going to take us. So what we focused on when we built our platform is we had some core principles that drove our design, right? We wanted to make sure that it was a world-class customer service, because newspapers have enough challenges in the sense of, telling our story that we're not dead, right? Newspapers are not dead. Sure, the delivery mechanism might be changing to a certain extent, and our business models are changing, but there are still plenty of newspapers out there that are vibrant in their communities. And so we made one of our very first principles was we wanted a consumer-driven product that would allow consumers to come onto this thing, customize and place their order, and be out in a very short amount of time. And so we reduced the process to the 4 steps that you see here. And this is how we continue to please the consumers that use the product. We value their time. We make a very usable process. When we go out and we talk with publishers and they say, but is it complicated? We kind of like to joke that if your consumer can make a Facebook post, they can use Modulist, right? And we kind of, as simple as that sounds, we boiled our development process down to that, right? Can somebody with the most basic skills of a social media app, can they use our product? So I will put all of these up on the screen. I know some people process faster than I talk. So what I would just encourage all of you is if you decide to go down this road of building, we use the term entrepreneurial, right? We built something within our company to solve a business need that we needed, and we're able to then take that and make a business model that applies to other external customers as well. But, from the very beginning, we focused on stakeholder identification. We went through and had interviews with everybody that was a stakeholder in our organization before we sat down to build a product. We wanted everybody to have felt like they had input into the process, and so that we didn't get 6 months into development and then somebody raised their hand and said, but what if? Ownership was really important to us. We did not want to focus on taking the intellectual property of our clients and making it our content. There are other vendors out there in the space that do that. When they sign their clients, you have to give away your content to get their service. We didn't want to go down that road. What we wanted to do was build a better tool for local media to use and be a partner with them and allow them to to completely contain the rights to their content so that we were building their audiences. Um, you know, Property interests. So obviously, we wanted consumers to be bought into this too. And so when we created our site, we didn't ask consumers to turn over the rights of their property either. And then obligation and legal interests. We wanted to spell out in our contract, which if when we sign with an external client, it's a really short contract. It's about 5 pages long. Um, we put ourselves at the point where we turned over all of the rights so that it was on our external client again, so that we could build that relationship in the sense that we were not gaining traction in our business on the behalf of somebody else. We really truly wanted to make all of our clients, whether it was the media owner, the funeral home, or the consumer, or in the case of a business that places a business announcement, we wanted them to be the primary owner and retainer of everything that they used and processed through Modulist. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, Andrea, just in the interest of time. I know we're looking at about 5 minutes here. So if you're going down this road, here are some of the things that we learned, right? You got to decide on project management and communication. We have our communication platforms that we use. This isn't a commercial. I won't tout which ones we use, but find a product that works for you guys so that all of the people are in the process, and that it's not just dependent on in-person meetings, once a week where people can get left out of the loop. But decide on a project management and communication software that works for your needs and includes everyone. Bring out the donuts, right? So we need to be able to influence different parts of an organization, even when you don't have formal authority to do so. So way back in 2012, when our CEO asked me to go down this road, I didn't oversee any of the personnel at any of our 40 newspapers that would have been overseeing obits. I didn't oversee our development team. I didn't oversee our advertising folks who had set the prices back then. Basically, in each of those cases, we went out, built the case for what we were doing, and invited them into the process and used diplomacy to help them get where we needed. There was nothing big-footed about this. There was no overt authority in the sense that we just demanded that it happen. We worked with all of the stakeholders within our organization to develop a team that we could get this process out the door. So I always follow up. The thing is even when there's been a mistake made, I think one of the things that continues our success is we own our mistakes, we admit them to our external clients, and then we bend over backwards to try and rectify the situation however we can. So that's really important. And then delegate a specific meetings facilitator when applicable. You can talk to anyone on my team. Oftentimes, I'm not the best facilitator of a meeting just because my mind is in a dozen different places. But the really critical thing is we have 4 people that serve in different channels of our organization, whether it's sales, marketing, the frontline operations, or tech. And we elevated them to a position of authority, and we empowered them to do their jobs, right? Oftentimes that mantle of who's delegating and who's facilitating that current meeting often switches from person to person depending on the scope of that meeting. And so I would just highly, be agile, be flexible, hire really smart people, and get out of their way. So we do have some partners that have given us some really nice comments to share. Obviously, it's always nice to be able to share some of our FCC partners. Some of you probably know Aaron Beecher, but this is one of the quotes we use to go out and sell to external partners because I think it sums up what we do. And Aaron says, Modulist modernized the user-generated paid content experience and decreased the number of FTEs needed. I know that sounds kind of cold and calculated, right? It's Modulist's job. We don't go into a newspaper and say, "Hey, pick us so that you can, lay off employees." Our goal is to walk into local media companies that have been depleted by the current media landscape and say, "Hey, let us support you so that you don't have to decrease more FTEs, right? Let us decrease your production costs and increase your revenue." There's our team, a little outdated. I think there's a couple of people in there that aren't that have joined us since this photo, but we like to bill ourselves as community content experts. It's been a wild 10-year ride getting here, and we hit the 11:25 mark. So, Andrea, I guess at this point, I would just open it up for questions.
Sure. Thank you, Devlin. We do have a couple comments and questions in the chat space. So we had someone ask to share the link for the project management template or project planner template, and we'll get that into the chat too. One of the questions is, someone said, I've noticed that the Grand Forks Herald doesn't seem to be available on Modulist, so I email our business news to the Biz Briefs email address. Will the Herald be included on Modulist in the future?
That is something that we're actually discussing right now. That's a very this user, whoever sent that question in, knows they use my. So Grand Forks actually predates the business announcements that we rolled out to everyone else in the FCC company. They had a process in place that they had established before we made business announcements as a paid content category. So right now, their process is working for Grand Forks. We are in the process of discussing with them, bringing them into Modulist just simply so that we can ease that for the consumer. So keep watch. I don't have a specific deadline right now, but we do try every month. We generally roll out new updates to Modulist. So please continue to look, and we'll make an announcement on our blog page that we have on modulist.news too when we bring Grand Forks in. So that's a great question.
There's another question, and I kind of had I was wondering the same thing. How did the name Modulist come about?
Well, how many agency people do we have on here? So when we were working in the very beginning stages with MentorMate as a development team, at the very same time, we actually employed the use of a marketing and branding firm. And not to offend anyone on the call here, I will just not say who we did that with. So, but again, don't want to, this isn't a sales pitch, right? But we went through that process of figuring out who we were and who our ethics were and who our principles were, what our principles were going to be. The same process that I'm sure so many agency people on here use. And our partner came back with a list of 5 finalist names, right? And this is a story in how things grow on you. I will be honest, I looked at all 5 of those names and I'm like, man, none of them hit the mark. And I'm like, how did we go so wrong? We spent months in this process with this agency. And so after the pitch book came back to us and we reviewed it and we had set up a meeting with our partner and they said, okay, remember, this is an ideation session. Let's go through and you tell us what we hit and what we missed on. And when we went through, the very last slide was names, the naming convention. And I was just honest. And I'm like, I don't think you hit it at all. I don't like any of these 5. and they said, well, just sit with it, right? Just sit with it. We'll have another meeting in 2 weeks. And I have to be honest, Andrea, over the course of 2 weeks, Modulist was the name I liked the least. And then all of a sudden it grew on me. And when I started looking at their explanation and you know, their ideology behind how that name came and why they kind of took two words, modular and a listing. So when this project was kicked off in the very beginning, it was called the listing experiment, right? Because each of the listings, an obit, you know, happy ad, whatever, they were called listings. And so, and it grew on me, right? But it was a testament to the agency that we were working at, the branding and the market, that they knew what they were doing, right? And they came back and they convinced me of it. And over the last 4 years, I've grown pretty fond of the name. So
well, thank you for that story. I'm sure a lot of our listeners were interested in that as well. We have agency people on the line here, and it's just interesting from the branding perspective.
Well, shout out to what they do, because really, truly, I think they were good at helping me to rethink. You know, obviously, very admittedly, very linear thinker, very inside the box thinker coming out of a newsroom. That's who I was, right? And I'm like, what does modulus even mean? It's not a word, right? And over time, the agency we worked with convinced me of it, and I'm glad they did.
Okay. Well, thank you, Devlin. Thank you for being here today. And I think we will wrap up this session, and I will turn it over to Sadie in case there is any announcements she'd like to make.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Devlin. That was a great presentation. It was awesome to hear how it came to be and how it works.